They told me my lake was hurting their property values. Then they put up a fence around my dam and told me I wasn't authorized to touch it. One of them even smiled and said, "If you won't cooperate, the HOA knows how to make you disappear." Politely. You ever been told right to your face that you're a problem in the neighborhood your own grandfather built? Yeah, that happened. I woke up one morning in the same old cabin, looked out at the sunrise, and realized I was surrounded by 47 mansions with their perfect lawns and imported trees, all pretending I was the outsider. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a takeover dressed up as community spirit. And buddy, they picked the wrong guy to try and squeeze out. See, my family's been here since the lake was just a patch of mud. My grandfather built the dam himself back in '52, spent 3 years stacking stone and pouring concrete with his own hands. My dad took care of it after him. When the old man passed, I thought I'd won the lottery. Turns out what I inherited was a war zone, I just didn't know it yet. It kicked off on some Monday while I was hunched over the spillway tightening the release valve. There's a peace to mornings by the water, you know. The mist, the birds, the feeling like you're the only person awake. Then I heard those car doors thunk, thunk, thunk behind me. I turn around and 3 jet black luxury cars are parked there, out steps. A woman who looked like she'd been built in a lab for selling real estate. Perfect hair, perfect suit shoes, worth more than my monthly mortgage. Behind her were 4 more dressed for a board meeting, not a muddy lake shore. She introduced herself as Veronica Hale, president of the Lakeside Estates Neighborhood Association. She wanted to help me capitalize on my property's potential. I said, "What kind of potential are we talking?" She spread documents across my truck hood like she was on a home shopping channel. "We'll offer $100,000 for the lakefront strip. You can't build on it anyway due to setbacks." I just stared. 2 acres for $100,000 when the smallest lot in this place went for $1 million. You know what I mean? I explained as politely as I could that this lake wouldn't even exist if my grandfather hadn't built that dam. They built 47 houses around water that wasn't theirs. Veronica's face tightened. "You're hurting the community's image and property values. That's a problem." One of her lackeys stepped forward. All condescending smiles explained, "My property didn't fit the aesthetic they'd worked so hard to create." I glanced at my well-kept cabin, my dock, my garden, then back at this gaggle of trespassers trying to buy me out for pennies. "Let me get this straight," I said. "You built your little utopia around my family's lake, and now you want to squeeze me out." Veronica's smile disappeared. "Mr. Consincade, this neighborhood has ways of dealing with residents who aren't cooperative. We're trying to do this the easy way." That's when I saw the surveyors hammering stakes into the ground on my side of the property line. 50 feet inside, if I'm being precise. "Just paperwork," Veronica said, making sure the boundaries are clear. She was claiming land that had belonged to my family for 70 years. That night, I sat on my porch, stared at those stakes, and did what any self-respecting country boy does when the rich folks try stealing your land. I Googled how to fight wealthy neighbors. Turns out in a legal forum, someone said, check your water rights. In a lot of states, water rights trump everything. I spent hours reading about water law, old deeds, court cases. By sunrise, I had a plan. Next day, I drove to the courthouse, dusted off files nobody had opened in decades. What I found in those yellowed folders changed everything. My grandfather hadn't just built the dam, he'd filed for primary water ownership rights over the whole watershed. Not just the land. The water. I could hardly believe it. The next day, a gold-embossed notice from the HOA was taped to my door, an emergency community safety meeting. I nearly tossed it, but decided to see what they were planning. The community center was packed with folks who looked like they'd never mowed their own lawns. Veronica ran the show projecting slides of my dam circled in red, talked about critical infrastructure concerns, showed stock images of dam failures, floods, kids in rain boots being rescued by firemen. Their consulting engineer started throwing out technical jargon, talking about outdated methods, insufficient spillway capacity. Never mind that my dam had survived bigger storms than any of their McMansions ever would. When it came time for questions, some lady in the third row said, "If the dam breaks, our families are at risk, right?" Veronica nodded gravely. "That's why we need oversight." They voted 47 hands up. The only one against was mine. Veronica smiled and announced unanimous support for HOA oversight of the dam. The next morning, I woke to the sound of bulldozers. Crews were fencing off my dam, slapping up signs that read, "Authorized personnel only." A foreman handed me a laminated Notice County permit safety regulations, all the legalese they could muster. I called Sarah Chen, a young lawyer I'd found online. She rolled up in an old sedan business suit from Target, asking all the right questions. She looked at the fence, the paperwork, then at Veronica's crew. "They can't vote away your property rights," she said. "But they're using safety as cover. Give me 48 hours. That night, armed guards patrolled the new fence, separating me from the dam I'd maintained all my life. But I kept thinking there's always something they miss. Sarah called at dawn. "Get to the courthouse. Now." We met in the basement, surrounded by boxes of records. She grinned, waving a certificate, my grandfather's water rights, never challenged, never revoked. "You don't just own the land, Liam. You own every drop." She explained the law. If I wanted, I could start maintenance requiring water release and legally drain the whole lake. We filed the paperwork that morning, formal notice to the county, copies certified and delivered. Then we drove home. Veronica was supervising fence work when we pulled up. Sarah waved the certificate, explained in front of witnesses that I was asserting my legal water rights. Veronica's face went pale. "That's impossible," she sputtered. Sarah smiled. "Maybe read the law." I unlocked the spillway and let the water roar. In 6 hours, the lake was 6 feet lower, muddy banks. Where lawns used to touch water, a smell like rotting leaves wafting through open windows. By sunset, for sale signs had started sprouting. Veronica tried to hold it together, called another emergency meeting. But by then the press was sniffing around literally and figuratively. Social media lit up with hashtag swampfront mansions. Real estate agents panicked and moving trucks rolled in. I watched from my porch, sipping a beer, as the paradise they'd built on my family's water turned into a stinking mess. Then the feds showed up, black SUVs, helicopter suits everywhere. Agent Morrison introduced himself, flashed credentials, and handed me a document. My dam was now critical infrastructure. They seized control for national security reasons, banned me from the controls, and get this name, Veronica, as the official emergency manager. My lake filled back up, the lawns went green, and the community threw a victory party for her. The news called her a hero. But sometimes the only way to win is to dig a little deeper. Late one night, going through my grandfather's papers, I spotted something I'd never noticed. His original 1952 survey showed a smaller lake and a creek running where now stood a row of million-dollar homes. I started digging old county records, satellite photos. Sure enough, Veronica's expansion had buried a federally protected waterway. Sarah and I called the EPA, sent them everything. Within days, environmental investigators were all over the place, sampling, scanning, mapping. Turns out burying a creek and filling wetlands to make luxury lots is a federal crime, up to 25 years, millions in fines, mandatory restoration. Cameras rolled as Veronica was cuffed on live TV, charged with conspiracy, fraud, and environmental destruction. 6 months later, the luxury homes were bulldozed, the creek restored, and the lake was back to the size my grandfather designed. The dream community was gone, just a memory and a cautionary tale. I still sit on my porch watching the water flow, thinking about how justice moves like water, slow, relentless, but it always gets there in the end. So what about you? Ever seen justice flow back where it belongs? Drop your stories below. Was I right to stand my ground, or did I go too far? Let's hear it, because around here we know some things are worth fighting for.